Welcome back to today's build. I'll be your guide to this wonderful game we all love. Let's get started.
Today's deck is the one true 2/2. His name is Wilson, the Cultist of the Absolute, and this is the Scare Bear. Wilson is a 2/2 for 2 mana that has words, all of which make him excellent in combat. The Trample and Vigilance means that we want to attack, and that means we'll be doing everything we can to capitalize on that. Since this is a Voltron deck and we're putting all our eggs into one basket, we'll also want ways to protect Wilson beyond that ward too, and preferably also contribute to our other goals while doing so. The Cultist of the Absolute is a background that more than doubles Wilson's base power and makes him even more difficult to stop. But the cost of this power is a creature each turn on our upkeep, so we need creatures to fuel that fire. And like all sacrifice decks, these should be creatures that we benefit from sacrificing, with abilities that trigger when they leave the battlefield, or creatures who have outlived the utility of their other abilities. Together, this means that we're most looking for creatures that can buff our commander long after they've left the battlefield, or buffs, protection, and interaction that can leave creatures behind for us. Since Wilson is a creature whose value comes from combat and we only get one combat step a turn, Wilson generates value over time, so we'll want to play him first. Whereas the background doesn't do anything at all without Wilson in play, and can actually cost us value over time in many cases, so we need creatures in play after Wilson but before the background. Awakening Zone, Jadar, and Ophiomancer all provide creatures, but that's all that they're doing. It's a common trap in sacrifice decks that players often sacrifice creatures for no other reason than sacrificing them, and often generate way more tokens than we actually need. We're only sacrificing one creature per turn, remember? We don't need a snake every upkeep. Instead, we'll swap them out for these cards, which also only provide creatures but at a much more efficient and effective pace. Cultivate, Putrefy, and Moldervine Reclamation are the kinds of resources that we want to develop, but not in the ways that we want to develop. Instead, we'll play these cards, which actually interact with our game plan and do so much more efficiently. Zulaport Cutthroat, Eternal Witness, and Blood Artist are likewise cards that Aristocrat players will be familiar with, but these cards are best when we're sacrificing a large mass of creatures each turn, and we're only sacrificing one. This deck is really much close to being a Voltron deck with barely an element of sacrifice to it at all. And what's more, since we're winning through commander damage in the games we're winning, the payoffs that Artist and Cutthroat bring don't actually do anything. Instead, we'll use these cards, which provide payoffs that we actually care about when creatures die, where the Fungal Rebirth works at instant speed, which is helpful when players try to take advantage of the background trigger to get you to sacrifice Wilson by removing other creatures. Lastly, Heroic Intervention, Swiftfoot Boots, and Tamiyo Safekeeping all protect our commander, but we have so many better options that it's baffling these made it in. We'll replace them with these cards instead. So what do our lands look like? Our lands aren't anything special. Most of our mana base is basic forests and basic swamps, but if you feel like splurging and playing something exotic, we have a few cards in this deck that care about our forest count, so an Overgrown Tomb would not be amiss, but it's far from necessary. I wouldn't recommend other dual-typed forests that might come in tapped though. Our curve is really tight in this deck, and it's actually really important that our lands all come in untapped. So if you wanted to, you could easily stick to basics. At the end of this video, I'll provide 2 lists, and one of them will be an extra budget list. So what's our timeline? Turn 1, we'll play any of these 1-cost mana dorks to accelerate our game plan and have a body to sacrifice if we need it down the line. Turn 2, we'll play Wilson so that his summoning sickness will wear off as soon as possible. Since we run enough of those mana dorks earlier, we actually have a mana left over that we can use to put out one of those earlier double bodies. But what we'd rather play out is something to power up Wilson, which could be any of these amazing pickups. If you'll recall, I said earlier that the curve is actually very tight in this deck, and the number of cards we have in this slot is evidence of just how efficient it is at getting Wilson ready for battle early on. Turn 3 is our target for our background. With Wilson already in play, he can attack and immediately put that power boost to good use. We can spend the rest of this turn suiting up Wilson more, which is a good use of mana, or we can spend some mana slowing down our opponents with these interaction pieces. One particular piece of removal that I want to highlight though is the card Finishing Move. For 3 mana, we can get rid of an enemy creature and permanently increase Wilson's base power with any of these sticker sheets, because stickers don't fall off if he ever goes to the command zone like an aura would. Next, we'll need to refuel our hand with Hunter's Insight, Hunter's Prowess, or Soul's Majesty. Turn 5 is when things really heat up though, because by this point we've usually knocked out a player, and these cards can help us begin to transition into the endgame. And Rishkar's Expertise is actually the top of our curve, meaning that we can cast anything that we find off. To protect our commander from our very scared opponents, we'll play Snakeskin Veil, Gaia's Gift, and Royal Treatment to protect Wilson now, buff him, and make him an even harder thing to target in the future. We've got several ways to finish off our opponents, ranging from the cruel, to the obvious, to the silly. Voltron decks are always a little slower to win just by nature of a single creature can only attack one player each combat, and without being in colors with extra combats or extra turns, there's just no way to win before turn 6 with this kind of strategy. But this deck support goes a very long way towards mitigating a lot of the weaknesses of Voltron's strategies by being extremely efficient at protecting its commander and developing our game plan at the same time.
A very special thanks to all my amazing patrons. When I started this channel, I wanted to talk about deck building decisions with my videos, but in practice what ends up happening is that I talk for 30 minutes about all the nuance of a deck, which is longer than I'm comfortable with posting to YouTube. Here, patrons can request priority deck techs, access extended discussions on their favorite decks, in-depth guides on complex game actions, and more.
So if you enjoy this content, consider becoming a patron today. One of the things my patrons have made possible is a special series of deck techs that I'm really excited to show off to you guys. When I finally get them all uploaded, I'll be giving away a special collection of altars and tokens that I've made, corresponding to each deck on the channel. For example, for the Merkle Lord of Bones deck, the prize is a set of double-faced altars of the most prominent cards in the deck, whose backsides are set in the constellation frame with updated text to show that they're acting as enchantments now. For every 1,000 views on each video, I'll increase the prize pool for that deck. All you have to do to be eligible to win is be subscribed to the channel.
Consider supporting the channel today. If you like this video, here are some of the decks I'm working on next, so if you like what you see, make sure to subscribe so you don't miss any, and check out the playlist in the top left for more. Thanks for watching!